Hello guys, welcome or welcome back to the channel. My name is Claire and this is Polly Put the Petal On, and today's video is a different one for me, guys, and I'm literally sitting here feeling quite vulnerable, to be honest, but it's something that I want to highlight. It's something that I want to make people aware of because I wasn't aware of it, you know, when I have suffered with it and did suffer with it for quite some time before I got diagnosed. And it's an important one, really, because A, it can make you feel miserable, and B, you know, it can lead to something quite serious. So you'll have seen by the thumbnail that it's called Lichen sclerosus, and it is a chronic inflammatory skin condition, and it can be anywhere on your body, but generally it's located in your intimate area, so your vulva. Men can get it as well as women, and you know, I am going to be using words as well that I will probably be embarrassed to say, but I'm going to say them because how can I put my story across if I don't use the correct words? So this video is for anybody that's suffering with it. I know one of my subscribers already has it. She asked me in my last video, because I did say in my last video I would be doing something, and she guessed it straight away. And anybody that may be suffering with feminine itching or anything like that. So like I say, it's men and women, it's not just women, but yeah. So what I've done is I've written some notes because I'm not an expert, and I am going to leave a QR code up on screen, and if that doesn't work, I have got this, and this was given to me by my gynecologist on my last visit. She said, what we didn't have the last time you came, which was January the 3rd2nd this year, she said what we didn't have last year, so things are progressing with it. She said what we didn't have last year was this, and she gave me this card, and it's a wealth of information. It's been written by doctors and patients of lichen sclerosus too. And there's an abundance of information on there, so I'm going to hold that up. I hope that's focusing. I'm not sure if it is it? Please, if this doesn't work, or the one on screen, do reach out to me, get in touch if you want any further information. Because I will send that to you. I will send that QR code to you, or I will leave the email, sorry about that, the address, the web address on the screen as well. It's interesting. So I have written some notes from my personal experience, and what I'm gonna do these bullet points with you first, and then I'm going to share my story of how it came about, because I was misdiagnosed for quite some time, to be honest, and by the time I was diagnosed correctly, it had done quite some damage. So but all is not lost. This isn't a negative vulva disorder. You know, we shouldn't look at it like that. That's what I'm saying. Because since being diagnosed and on correct medication, yeah, I'm not saying I don't have flares, I do, but let's get onto these bullet points so I can give you some indication of what we're talking about, and then, you know, we'll get on with my story, if you like. So I'm going to put my glasses on because, like I say, I've just sat and made some points that I know of, but I'm not the expert, and like I say, if you use the QR code, then, you know, you'll get a lot more information from that. So it's a chronic inflammatory skin condition with an autoimmune component, and that is quite possible because they're linking it to people with autoimmune disorders. It's a vulva disorder, and like I say, it can happen with men, but I can't speak for males because, you know, I'm just me. It's a long-term chronic condition, and it can come in flares, and mine definitely comes in flares. I have flares, but not only flares of that, but if there's certain things that trigger, and if I am having a fibromyalgia flare, fibromyalgia is renowned, with me in particular, I can't speak for everybody else, for seeking out my weak spots, and that is one of them. So I will have a flare. If I'm having a fibromyalgia flare, I'm having a lichen sclerosis flare too. So and that's even with treatment, but I will talk about treatment because I've brought my treatment down, and I will show you that. Skin can become fragile, causing skin splits and scarring and fusion. So your skin can fuse, which has happened to me. There may be a chance of skin discoloration, which happened to me, and texture, again, happened to me. You can also be misdiagnosed, because I was for quite some time. And I felt dismissed, because through childhood trauma, I was diagnosed in my 20s as having psychosomatic disease, so that my mind can literally make myself poorly in that area. And I you know, that's another story, but you can be misdiagnosed and dismissed, and I was. So please don't be, after you've heard this video, please don't be dismissed, and go to your doctor. And if you're not getting any better, please say to them, could it be lichen sclerosus? So yeah, it can take time to be diagnosed. The treatment involves steroids, but that's not to be afraid of those steroids. And I was, even during this year of being diagnosed and using the steroids, I was worried. And when I went on the 2nd of January, you know, she said to me, don't worry, because the one that I'm using is quite a top tier steroid ointment. And she put my mind at rest. Can be triggered by stress, definitely. And like I say, in my case, fibromyalgia, it can knock your confidence and your self-image, and it did for me. It did for me. So let's go on. And it can be deemed as embarrassing, but it shouldn't be. Sorry. So it can be painful, you know, everyday clothing can irritate you, sanitary wear can irritate you, so yeah, it can aggravate and irritate, and it can be painful. And long term, and this is the worst case scenario, long term and left untreated, can lead to cancer of the vulva. And that is why I want to highlight this, because it's serious, you know, but it's common, but it's not heard of very much. I was talking to my gynecologist in January, and I said, I saw an article the other day about this. Please don't let my tears put you off or frighten you, because honestly, it's just because I'm digging deep. There is light at the end of the tunnel, there really is. And with treatment, you know, and you see your gynecologist every year, you know, once a year, and also your doctors are there now, they know that you've got it. And also, you know, you self-check, just like you check your breasts, you check, you know, you look and you check yourself, especially during flares, because you don't want to see any, I don't know, ulcers or sores or anything like that. And you've got your treatments, but so don't let my upset put the fear of God in you, because there's no need to. It's just that I'm just going back to the time where I was diagnosed, and I do look different down there. Not that anybody could tell, and that's what she reassured me. And the thing is, I don't know why I'm crying, because I'm not going to be I'm not going to be out there walking around flashing it at everybody anyway, am I? So, Autumn, please. So I don't know why I'm getting so upset. So it can lead to cancer of the vulva, but this is rare, and regular checks are important. And by like I've just said, by your gynecologist and your doctor and yourself. So I do check myself, and my gynecologist, I go annually to go and see her, and she's absolutely lovely, very understanding, and she's lovely. She really is. Now, those are the kind of negative sides to it, but I'm gonna have written some bullet points because, you know, it's not all doom and gloom. It's not sexually transmitted. It's not contagious. It can spread, and maybe spread's the wrong word, because it's not spread by, it's not infectious, so it's not spreading by that. It's just traveling. It's just traveling, if you like. So mine has travelled from my initial diagnosis. Mine has travelled now, but because of that, I'm taking extra steps, and I will get to that. It has nothing to do with hygiene and cleanliness. You know, if you're suffering it, you've not done anything to cause it. It is medical. It is common. It can be managed effectively. Symptoms can improve. We're allowed to talk about it, and we're not alone. You know, because it is common, and once diagnosed, you know, and you start that treatment, things do, you know, start to improve. So I'm now going to tell you about my personal story and how this came about. So I'd had my hysterectomy, I think it was 2017, 2018, something like that. And of course there's bound to be changes, isn't there? There's bound to be changes too, because I had, obviously I went straight into menopause, surgically induced menopause, which was like that, and I was given estrogen, which I'm still taking now, estrogen patch on my bum twice a week, and things started to change, but they do. And then I started itching down below. Now, I've been a person that suffers, I've already told you, I've got psychosomatic disease, and I can make through childhood trauma, I can make myself ill down there, not knowingly, you know, it's psychosomatic. And my doctor of 30 years would say, if anybody's going to get an infection down there, it's Claire. I was renowned for them, always backwards and forwards to the doctors. So I started itching incessantly, and I thought, oh, it's thrush. So you know, I went to Tesco's, got the thrush tablet, the one tablet that you take, and didn't stop it. And I'm not one of those persons that shies away from going to the doctors with those kinds of issues. I go, you know. And so I was backwards and forwards, and this went on for 18 months. I was backwards and forwards, because this itching was, like I say, it was incessant. It was horrific at times. I was sore, and not necessarily through the itching, you know. It was awful, an awful, very uncomfortable, sore time, and nothing was stopping it. And you know what brings me today, another thing that brings me today, is the fact that I see these adverts on TV. Is it for VSAN? You know, feminine itching, get this cream. The thing is, there should be something behind that. You know, yeah, feminine itching, get this cream, because some feminine itching is quite innocent. You know, get this cream, but there should be something behind that. You know, if symptoms persist, go to, and it should be voiced over, not just in small print on the piece of paper that comes in with that cream. Because I was backwards and forwards, and it was put down to the menopause, hormones. it was deemed as thrush, but I said it can't be because I've been treating it. So I was given a canistan with a steroid in it, and that helped a little bit. But the minute, I was pre-warned, it's steroid, you can't use this long term, blah, blah. So the minute I stopped using it, it flared in a really bad way. And this carried on, like I say, for 18 months. Now, I got to the point where this itching and this discomfort and these sores, I thought, what can I do? What can I do? And I was chucking all sorts at it. I was treating it, everything that I could buy off the shelf, I was treating that, with everything that I could get my hands on off the shelf and at the chemist. Because I was just being, I don't know whether it was because I do have psychosomatic illness or whether, I don't know, or whether they were just putting it down to menopause continuously. I don't know, but I felt fobbed off, and I wouldn't mind, but this doctor was female as well. Anyway, so I then got to, I thought, right, I tried everything, and I thought, what can I do? One day I'd spotted some pseudocreme, and I thought, I'm going to try that. So I tried that, and it did keep it at bay a little bit. There was some slight relief from that cream, and I thought, right, well, I'll just keep using this then. There must be something in it that's helping. And I wasn't afraid because I'd seen the doctor God knows how many times throughout that 18-month period. And so I wasn't afraid of anything, because I thought if there was anything untoward, they'd have told me, they'd have said. Anyway, one day I decided, because, the pseudocreme then started wearing off, and I thought, I need to look. So I looked, I examined myself with a mirror, and I realised that I'd changed colour. I'd changed colour in patches on my vulva, and I thought, what the hell is this now? And I thought, oh, the back of my mind said, it's the pseudocreme. It's all very innocent, because you don't know, you don't know. And I thought to myself, oh, it's the pseudocreme, it's fine. Anyway, this went on for another couple of 3 weeks. I was still using the pseudocreme, and then but I knew I'd changed colour, and so I kept looking. And one day I was so irritated and extremely sore that I looked, and it was pure white, and I thought, oh my goodness, it was pure white, and the texture was, well, I'm gonna say it was like cottage cheese, but it wasn't a discharge or anything like that. That was my skin. And of course, I immediately got onto the phone to the doctors, and I said, somebody needs to see me, and they need to see me now, because I have drastically changed colour. Anyway, I got down to the doctors, and the doctor didn't know what it was. She said, I've never seen anything like this in my life. She said, I'm going to have to go and get another doctor. So she went and downstairs, got another doctor. He came up, and he said, I'm really not sure about this. But he did say there is a thing called lichen sclerosus, and it could be that. He said, what we're going to do now, right now, he said, I'm going to refer you to a gynecologist in Manchester, because normally I would go to other local hospitals, but this gynecologist that I see in Manchester specifies in vulva disorders. And in the meantime, he said, I'm going to treat you with this steroid cream, which was a cream. And so that's what we started doing. And then as I was treating myself, this white skin, because it was my skin, started you know, and the inflammation and everything started to tame down, it was coming away from me. You know, the skin, the white thick skin was coming away, and that's where it did its damage. And then I had 10 months to wait to see the gynecologist, and I waited 10 months, and then I went for, you know, I went for my diagnosis, and she said, you know, it's lichen sclerosis, of which I cried, because of the changes. But she said to me, you know, come on, nobody would know, you know, but it has changed colour in patches. My skin has fused, because it can cause scarring. And so part of my labia has fused, and it kind of sticks itself together. And my clitoral hood has fused, and I'm going back to this, I'm coming forward now to this year. I said to her, I'm sore on my perineum. That doesn't itch, it's just sore. I said, I did go to the doctors, and they knew that I had this lichen sclerosis, and she just said to me, oh, there's nothing there, it just looks like a vein. And that's what I said to my gynecologist on the 2nd of January this year. And I said, oh, she said it's a vein, because I had it that day, the soreness. And she said it's not. She said that's lichen sclerosis. She said there's no vein there. So, you know, doctors aren't trained in it. But hopefully, you know, as time goes on, because like I say, this wasn't available. I don't know why this is, you know, I'm not entirely sure. But that's what it is, lichen sclerosis. And those are the things that can happen. And like I say, my skin has fused and I have changed colour. But like my gynecologist said, no one will know. And of course, I'm not running out there. You know, of course I'm not. Okay, I'm exposing myself to you now, but you know, it's not something, you know, it's private, it's in an intimate area, and you know, and you can continue with your sex life and, you know, all of that. You just go carefully, I would say. Do your treatments. I'm going to show you my treatment now, and it's taken them a year to get the GP. The gynecologist wrote to them and said, and I'm none the wiser, bearing in mind, wrote to them and told them what to prescribe me, and they prescribed me 2 wrong things before we got to the right thing, and I've only just got the right thing now. And that's the wash, because you don't wash in soap anymore. You use an emollient. So this is the correct emollient for me, which is hydromol, and this is prescribed by my gynecologist. It's hydromol ointment. It's like a thick lard, very thick lard, and you wash yourself with that. Now, because it's gone onto my perineum, and I didn't realise that I told you it travels, and it can travel to your back bit too, to your bum, and that, because mine has travelled from my clitoris, labia, and now down to the perineum, you can bet your bottom dollar I am not, because what I was doing was washing that round the back with soap and the front with, well, actually I was using something completely wrong, and I'll show you those, and this at the front, but now I'm using all of it. Because you would think to yourself as well, because that was what put me off as well, like, oh, you know, it's not, I'm not going to feel clean, but you do feel clean, and it's better for you. So yeah, that's it. That's it's really thick. It is like, you've got to really dig your finger in to get it. It's like lard. It's like lard. but it melts as you washing yourself, you know, and it rinses too. Now I've got that on me. So that's the correct, for me, that is the correct wash. For a year I've been using this. And this is the cream. It's Hydromol, but this is the cream. That's the ointment, and there's a difference, obviously, because that's thick and greasy and solid, and this is a cream consistency. But I was washing myself with that because that's what the doctors kept giving me, even though they'd had the letter from the gynecologist. And initially they gave me this. Now this is the bath and the shower Hydromol. Now this is good for tipping into your bath. It's good for the bath, and it's good for you all over your skin because it's an emollient, and so is that. You know, I suppose it all is, but for a wash you use, well, I do, because that is prescribed to me. You know, you may be different. And so that's to wash with. And then this is my steroid, which is, from what I believe, top tier steroid ointment, and it's called Dermavate, and that's the ointment. And you know, you just get it on your finger, and she told me the measurements because it goes quite some way, and it's a steroid, so you have to use, you know, you don't just slather it on, you have to use, you know, and you use, so say that part of your finger, this part, you use half of that, and that's twice a week, but during a flare, so that's every day in the shower, that's twice a week, and during a flare it's twice a day, every day for a week to 2. And if at all, and don't forget your self checks, and if at all you're worried, go to the doctors, or you can go straight back to the gynecologist. Yeah, and I have had flares. I get them on a regular basis, and I did say to her, you know, she said, are you using this twice a week? And because it's a steroid, I was worried, and I said, I've got to confess, no. But the minute I start feeling irritated, I start to use it. She said, no, I get that, I understand that. She said, but please know that where hair can't grow, she said, because it thins the skin, steroid does, so you mustn't overuse it. But she said where hair doesn't grow, which is your vulva, it's perfectly fine and safe to use twice per week. So what I do now is, because I've had that reassurance from her, and she's such a lovely lady, she knows what she's talking about, obviously. What a stupid thing to say. So what I do now is, when I change my hormone patch, which is twice a week, and it's normally on a Wednesday and a Saturday, I use this. That's my timing, Wednesday and a Saturday. And in between of that, if I get any irritation or anything like that, I will use it. Maybe possibly overnight is best for me. But that's it with irritation. If I get a flare, you know, then I do the proper treatment, and I also check myself. But like I say, that perineum issue, it's not an itch, it's just very sore. It's almost like a cut. It's not cut, and you can't see anything. It's just, well, you can see some discoloration, but it's just very sore. And so, you know, she said when she saw me, because you do have to go, when you do go for your checks, you have your legs in the stirrups, and, you know, she looks through a microscope. You want those, because they're looking, you know, rarely it can turn to cancer, but it still can turn to cancer, hence why you're having the checks and you're getting these things on prescription. That's why they're prescribed for you, because, you know, they're doing the best. It doesn't bother me, to be honest, going and putting my legs in stirrups. It really doesn't bother me. Okay, you know, when they're trying to talk to you about TV programs and things like that. You know, you are a bit you're not exactly because you feel a bit vulnerable because of the position that you're in, you know, but it's not terrible to keep going. And it's not, what would be terrible was if I, through embarrassment or anything like that, you know, I didn't have this medication, these medicated things, and you know, I got cancer of the vulva. I followed a lady on TikTok who had cancer of the vulva, and yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And that is why I have took the time today to sit and do this video. And I'm sorry if it's you know, too much for some and not enough for others, but I am here, and if there, and that QR code is there, and if there is anything that I can answer for you, please don't hesitate. And if you don't want to talk in the comments but you want to email, then I'll put that up on screen, pollyputthepetalon@gmail.com. please email me, because I do know that one of my subscribers has been recently diagnosed with this. And you know, don't feel as if you're alone, because you're not. And I know I got upset, but that was because I was thinking back to, because there are changes, you know, and I was aghast at the time, and so I was aghast that it could happen, you know what I mean, and that can happen to you. I wasn't aware of it, you know. I mean, I got upset, but I'm all right. I really am. And you can be too, whether you've been freshly diagnosed, whether you think you might have it, whether you've got that irritation, you know, have a look at yourself. Take yourself to your GP. And if you feel that you're getting, you know, fobbed off, please ask them, could it be lichen sclerosus? Because, you know, it's important. It really is important. And so that concludes this video for me. And if there is anything else that, you know, that there'll be plenty that I've left out, because I'm not medically, you know, I'm just going off what's happened to me and what I know personally. But if there's anything at all that I can help with, or anything like that, please don't hesitate. And okay, if you don't want to come in the comments, then don't come in the comments, come on to the email, and you know, but you're not alone, and it can be all right, you know. It's not, and I will end this video on a positive. I've not had a flare like that since I've started this treatment. You know, the one where my skin came away and it was like cottage cheese, and it was bright white. I've not had, and I'm going to touch wood there, I've not had a flare like that. Yes, I get bad flares, but nowhere near as bad as that since. And yes, it has, you know, travelled down to my perineum now, but I'm still actively treating, and you know, I haven't had a flare like that since. So thank goodness, and do take care. And that just leaves me to say, guys, I've been Claire, this has been Polly Put the Petal On, and you've been so kind, and I really appreciate every single one of you that has sat and tuned in, and I hope I've been of some help. And like I say, reach out to me or to a friend, to, you know, go into the bathroom with your mirror, go to the doctors. It's important. Take care. Bye.